It needs a voice though because you can't hear it. I mean, you can't see it. It won't switch. The screen won't
Like,
switch to you.
like, oh, my stars.
Shayna,
Oh,
that's so
oh.
weird. Oh
Ooh,
my god. Oh my god. Okay.
ooh.
While you're doing that, I'm gonna start the show. Um, Thank you so much for listening to The Geek and the Scribe. The Geek and the Scribe is a podcast hosted by Shayna and Jamara, critiquing pop culture, fandom, and literature. Our blackness is the lens through which we see the world, and our gender is how we experience it. This is the manifesto of two sisters who are unapologetically black women interested in discussing, critiquing, and celebrating culture in a world that prefers us to remain silent. Thank you for listening to The Geek and the Scribe. My name is Jamara, and I am your scribe.
And my name is Shayna, and I am your geek.
Shayna, have you drawn a face on your hand?
This is not a face on a hand, it is merely a face.
Oh my gosh, you're so weird. So on today's show, we are discussing one of our favorite movies and one of our favorite books, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And Who Framed Roger Rabbit is the story is essentially about a down on his luck private eye named Eddie Valiant, played by Bob Hoskins, who gets hired by cartoon producer R.K. Maroon, played by Alan Tilburn, to investigate an adultery scandal involving Jessica Rabbit, whose voice is done by Kathleen Turner. Jessica Rabbit, the sultry wife of Maroon's biggest star, Roger Rabbit, voice played by Charles Flesher. But when Marvin Acme, Jessica's alleged paramour and the owner of Toontown, is found murdered, the villainous Judge Doom vows to catch and destroy Roger, and Judge Doom is played by Christopher Lloyd. So that's the summary of the plot. What else can I'm like, the movie was released in 1988 and is one of the very few movies that features cartoons and I guess human actors in the same film, which made it incredibly different and interesting. So that's the high summary of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yay. I mean, it's a fair summary. That's the setup.
Yes, that is the setup, Shada. Where do you want to take us in terms of themes?
Well, as Who Framed Roger Rabbit was probably one of our favorite movies growing up, and really only in my adult years was I made aware that there was a book version. We decided that it would be fun to read it. But reading the book version has made us want to look back at the movie and the themes that are, well, the themes therein.
Right. So the themes that are in both the movie and the book, right?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
What are those
Now,
themes, Shayna?
what are the themes? Yeah, you want me to say what the themes are?
Yes. Unless you're just hoping that we can read them through your mind silently. Yes.
Oh, dude. Okay. You can't say saying we can't touch the screen and like osmosis it out. Okay. Okay. Moving on then. Well, two of the major themes in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, though not subversively, what you got? Not. Blah. I'm stumbling on my words. What's not overtly said, but is gathered in subtext, is a storyline of racism, and I guess segregation would also be a fair thing to say. The Toons are very much second class citizens, they're not treated the same way as the human characters in the story. And even though it's not something that they say outright, but it's something that they hint to all the time. Like when Roger beseeches Eddie for help, and he's like, there's no justice in Toontown anymore because the Toons live under an oppressive system that it was formed to keep them in check. And that, again, not one of those first things that people think of. It is a real clear theme in there. And one of the cooler themes, actually, that's not kind of a downer, is actually the, is sexual expectation, and especially sexual expectation of women, especially what they look like, which is really played out well by Jessica. But to bookend that nicely, you have the relationship that she has with Roger, where it doesn't have any of that expectation.
Right. So it's definitely. I mean, looking at let's start there and come back to the idea of the tunes as second class citizens. So the love relationship between Jessica Rabbit and Roger Rabbit is really an interesting theme because even the characters in the movie question it. Right? No one can really figure out why he's with her and why she's with him. And then there's a point in the movie where I think is it Eddie Valiant's kind of pseudo girlfriend asks like, "What do you see in him?" Or someone asks like, "What do you see with him?" And her response is just simply, "He makes me laugh."
Yeah, Eddie says they asked Jessica, he's like, what do you see in him? And she's like, and she says that, and you know what? It is to say something that maybe Roger just brought something that other people didn't. He appealed to her in a way that other people didn't try to. And
Right.
yeah, and there's something both intellectual and intimate about making somebody laugh. It says a lot about one, knowing what kind of sense of humor a person has, and how well you know them, that you know their sense of humor enough to consistently make them laugh.
Right, exactly. And there's something interesting about Jessica Rabbit's personal agency because there's the famous line where she says, like, it's hard being a girl, like, who looks like me, you know what I mean? And she's like, she's like, I was just drawn this way. Like
I'm not
that,
bad. I'm just drawn this way.
right. And so she just has these very dramatic moments where she's acknowledging, hey, there's a way that you look at me, and that may or may not be how I see myself, or it may or may not be how I define actually what I need. So anyway, that's yeah.
I don't know. Like, and that's it's funny because there's another scene in the movie that actually speaks a lot to perspective in that situation. When Eddie's in the Ink and Paint Club and he's talking to Betty Boop, and
Hmm.
he first sees Jessica and he goes, she's married to Jessica Rabbit? And Betty Boop says, yeah, what a lucky girl. See, in Betty Boop's perspective in that moment, it was Jessica who got lucky because her probably opinion was more that Roger is a really great guy. That's why Jessica's lucky to have him, more so than the values that Eddie was bringing in that moment, whereas he's looking at what he deems as a very beautiful woman, so why would she be with a goofy guy?
Right, exactly. So, I mean, again, another interior versus exterior, what people assume that Jessica needs and what they assume Roger would need, versus these two who are clearly in love, clearly protecting each other, and clearly have each other's back throughout the whole movie.
Yeah,
Even when Jessica has to essentially knock Roger out
yeah,
so he
with a
doesn't
frying
finish
pan.
with a frying pan, and Eddie's like, "Well, why'd you do that?" And she's like, I had to knock him out to keep him from getting hurt.
She's like, so he wouldn't get hurt. What do you like? What's wrong with your logic? But
Right, exactly.
like, and you gotta wonder if the reason why Jessica and Roger work is because perhaps they see the truest value of each other or the truest version of what they see themselves as.
Shannon, can you talk a little bit about film noir? This Who Made Roger Rabbit was one of the most expensive films ever made, and it's also a classic example of film noir. So I wanted to know if you could comment a little bit about that.
I
Um,
mean, well, film noir is a genre of film. Usually it's those classic detective stories where you see an alcoholic detective down on his luck and some dangerous femme fatale comes to his door and offers him a job he can't refuse. Movies like The Maltese Falcon really made the genre very popular. And with it, of course, Humphrey Bogart also made the genre very popular film-wise. It's funny enough, you don't see them as often or not. Film noir as a genre is parodied a lot. Like lots of TV shows like to do like a detective story, and they usually do it in this particular genre.
yeah, I love a good detective story. As I was
Yeah,
watching
no,
it,
those are super cool.
I forgot just how funny this film is, and of course, they play off of a lot of the classic Acme gags and 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 comedy, and just
Yeah,
really
no.
just silliness, even from uh, what is the baby's name?
Baby
Um,
Herman.
Baby Herman, who in the cartoon, in the cartoon, plays this little baby girl, and then as soon as it cuts, he's like this angry, disgruntled man with this deep voice. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
like
really funny.
he's the ultimate
Um,
man in a child's body.
Right. And there's the opening scene. Well, I mean, so there's also a lot of things that happen in this film that are kind of like I mean, in the opening scene, it's Baby Herman with his mom and then Roger Rabbit, and she makes a comment like get it together or you're going to go back to
To the
the
science lab or something to that effect.
science, yeah, the science lab where they, you know, referring to, where they
Experimenting.
experiment on animals. So I was just like, ugh, this movie. Um, but then, so it cuts from like the very dark to like the very silly. So that they have to cut because Roger can't do the right images floating around his head after he gets hit. I think they want stars and he has birds or something like that.
Yes, I remember. You know what? Those one of those scenes I always remembered really well. And he was like, "You want stars? I can give you stars. Run, look, look, look."
Oh my gosh.
Every time he hit
Yeah.
himself in the head, it was something else. There were like birds and bells and flashing circles. And
I mean, there's so much the tunes in Toontown, they just feel very they feel almost like slaves.
a little.
Is that
Oh,
is that too strong?
you know what? And I wonder if this was intentional or not, but that makes a huge nod to the old studio system. Like
Mhm.
the studio system back in the day worked that way. Like they owned the actors. Like they owned everything about them.
Mhm.
They did what they were told when they were told. Like no matter what,
Yeah.
and it's crazy. So
Yeah.
there's some real life correlations.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some real life correlations. And I mean, it seems like the tunes are they only essentially only exist for human entertainment. They're according from the human perspective, the human actor perspective, they they have they have no emotional depth. They have no ability to critically think. They can't operate, on their own. They always need to be saved by a human. right? As if they can't get themselves out of trouble. Um, they are at the whim of what's the song that Doom knocks on the in the
Oh,
bar when he's
shaving haircut.
yeah, so they're like at the whim, like no tune can resist that melody. And I mean it's actually pretty degrading because Roger is such a fully developed character with a strong emotional palette, with the ability to love, with you know mission driven to make others laugh, and to obviously not murder people.
Yeah, he's
So
not a murderer.
it's I mean I have so much empathy for Roger, and I also have so much empathy for Jessica, just their emotional depth and perspective.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Funny enough, one of the main characters we actually haven't talked about at all, which is Eddie Valiant, and it's funny that he represents something very interesting to me. And I didn't quite grasp what that was earlier, but as I grew up, Eddie Valiant, like, kind of in a way represents the loss of innocence, if you want to use that word. I don't know if I want to use that word. But think about it. He was this once happy-go-lucky guy, and what they show you in. By the way, bravo on the cinematography and the attention to detail for the props department for being essentially telling Eddie's life story in the items on his brother's desk. And they do a
Mm,
really good pan of it in the movie. And like I feel so the need to highlight this one scene because this scene essentially tells you everything you needed to know about Eddie and why he was so broken at the beginning of the story. Like clearly, it shows you that their father was a clown for Ringling Brothers. That's where they get their silly streak from. That they joined the police force and they were considered the clowns on the street. What you call it, even in their police class, their policeman's photo, they're wearing clown noses, and they show when they go out on their own, they start their own detective agency, and that shows you more than anything what probably a vibrant human being he was before the terrible, you know, dropping of a piano on his brother's head.
mhm.
um, and why that broke, because the very thing that or at least in this story, that he loved, hanging around Toontown, yakking it up with the tunes, and just being a big old clown, but still helping people with his awesome detective skills, was all kind of taken away from him in a really terrible, terrible moment. And it's like, what does that say about when the dreams that we have inevitably hurt us, or
Right.
the path in life we take hurt us, and how we have to be able to rally back, and because by the end of it, Eddie starts to get back his more vibrant, sillier persona. He's still a little more grizzled than he was before because he still went through what he went through, but man, you get to see him kind of turn a corner where he's like, okay, I'm going to get past this stuff and get some of that back.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely Eddie evolves. Uh he's like the Grinch. His heart grows two sizes, by the end of the movie. Uh I mean, we meet him as an alcoholic private investigator, right? Like
Per
so
NAR standards.
right, so like the level of dark that he's going through is extreme. Um I don't know if you knew this, Shayna, but so Bob Hoskins plays Eddie Valiant, and he actually wasn't the first choice for this role.
He
Spielberg,
wasn't.
yeah, Spielberg actually wanted Harrison Ford, but he was too expensive. And then they also considered Bill Murray for the role, but he already had other offers on the table, so he missed out. And they also considered Eddie Murphy. Um,
Oh, good Lord. I'm
yeah,
so glad that didn't happen.
they wanted Eddie Murphy at some point, and then Eddie Murphy actually turned it down, and then later regretted it.
No, no, that's
Um,
probably a good choice on his part. Like, even Eddie Murphy back then, and Eddie Murphy back then was a cool movie star. Like when he was still doing the Beverly Hills Cop movies, that was great. I don't see how that would have translated well in this particular, not only just the genre, but the type of humor that they were going for. It reminds me of the kind of movies he does now, and it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Though
interesting, interesting to
apparently,
think about.
apparently there's a story though for Bill Murray missing it. He apparently threw a fit when he realized that was the movie he passed on.
Oh, well.
Like I don't think because again the name of the movie changed a couple times,
Hmm.
uh, and so I wonder if he got the script under a different name and then later found like I could have done this. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, you snooze, you lose. Uh, so one choice that I'm so happy that they did make was uh, Christopher Lloyd as Judge Doom.
Oh
Uh,
man, was he not spectacularly creepy?
or I read online that he purposely didn't not he never blinked during filming just so they could get the character correct.
Yeah, that was the craziest fact they'd ever heard. I was like, wait, me too. For every take, you never blinked? Your eyes must have been itchy. Like, how bad do you think he wanted to like scratch his eyes? Like, or maybe he just has an ability not to blink. I don't know. Christopher Walken is not Christopher Walken. Christopher Lloyd is magical. Christopher Walken is magical too. But we're
Yeah.
talking about Christopher Lloyd. Like, there's like I feel like there's just certain people to me. There's nobody else like them, and there's nobody who could replace them, and they're just kind of magic. Like when they're
Yeah.
there, and it's funny. No matter what it is that they're in, they always bring something really cool to the table. It's like you put Christopher Walken in a scene, it's going to be awesome. You put Christopher Lloyd in a scene, it's probably going to be awesome. It doesn't matter what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean the level of sinister that Christopher Lloyd brings to this role as Judge
Oh,
Doom is incredible. Uh, I mean I just love Christopher Lloyd in
oh,
like just for life, like just for life in general.
no,
But then
he's fantastic.
yeah, but then for this role, I mean it's even down to the moment where we actually find out, and obviously there are going to be spoilers. This movie came out decades ago. So if you
Like
can't
almost
handle
30 years.
right,
Like
so
almost
if you're
30 years.
listening and you can't handle the spoiler, you just need to get your life together. Um, or we find out that Judge Doom is actually a tune. Like, and we see the high voice, and obviously there's the body change, and um, it all starts to make sense. He's just phenomenal in this role. So I was really happy. As a matter of fact, it made me want to do a show on the villain as a theme, where we just kind of run through our favorite villains. So maybe that's coming up in the future. But
Yeah. Like, no, he's by far one of the scariest villains of my childhood. There is something very unpleasant. One, when they run him over with the steamroller, traumatized me. Two, when he got back up after it went over him, traumatized me some more. And then when he admitted that he was the one who killed Eddie's brother, that traumatized me again, and it was legitimately scary and a suspenseful moment in my like 8-year-old life.
yeah, no, I mean it's kind of yeah, it's hard
You know,
because like really, and you kill his brother, like
yeah,
and like Eddie's been walking around all hurt all this time, thinking that it was a like you know what I mean, and I guess
which makes the
technically it
sense.
was a tune, but just not the right tune.
Which makes sense though. Now you realize because in the beginning of the movie they foreshadowed that they were like when Eddie asked who Judge Doom was, and his old lieutenant was like, he like how did he get elected? And he was like, well, he spread some. Essentially, he bought the election, and the guy who killed Eddie's brother, they were chasing him post a bank robbery. So that's where he got the money to buy the election.
Hmm.
It's like it all goes together.
Did you read? Did you? Yeah, it all goes together. Yes, Shayna. Did you read online about the real world parallels where at the end there's the big reveal that Judge Doom wants to create this he's really funny, this transportation system
A
called a
freeway.
freeway where people get
He's,
on and off all day and there
he's
are
like, by God, it'll be beautiful.
and there'll be cheap hotels and gas stations all along the route. You know what I mean? And so,
Hmm.
but apparently there was a real world parallel in terms of transportation scandal uh, that happened in the early 1920s with General Motors, I believe. Anyway, so it's kind of funny that I mean, in 2016, it's kind of funny that that's even like
Yeah.
a scandal,
Well,
like a real.
okay. Like, who framed Roger? What year is it supposed to be? The
It's a
1940s.
yeah. It's set in 1947 Los Angeles.
Okay. So we are all aware, right, that a freeway existed at that point.
Yes, exactly.
Also, it's weird. Like, what do you mean there's no road past Toontown?
Like there's no road.
Like, so the world ends where Toontown starts? Like,
Kind of.
does Toontown sit in the middle of the U.S. and you can't get to the other side? Like, you have to travel around the world the other way to get to, like, California from Boston? Because, what does that mean there's no road past Toontown? Like, where is Toontown?
Uh, yeah, there's just no road, Shayna. I don't know why that's hard for you.
No, no, no. Explain. You explain right now. I'll wait.
There's no road. There's no road. There's nowhere to go.
So the human world ends when you get to Toontown. So is half the
Well,
planet like Toon?
so I assume that humans. I mean, they never really talk about where tunes come from. I assume the tunes are created by man, right?
I don't. They don't say.
I mean, maybe
Like
this
they
is
don't
like
say if
some.
they're like born. I don't know.
No, I think they're created. I think that that's my theory that tunes are created, and that this idea of creating a freeway is like some sort of like manifest destiny. You know, spreading and taking over the West.
So the Toons are
That's the
now the Native Americans, is what you're saying.
I mean, kinda. Only though,
Oh,
if someone created,
there are some unpleasant parallels. Think about it. Like after the essential conquering of the Native Americans, after that whole manifest destiny crap, they started to like capture like some of the older braves and put them in those Wild West shows as entertainment.
oh, wow, that's deep. Yeah, so I mean, I guess so, but
That's
that's what I thought.
that's fucked up.
It is fucked up. Um, yeah. Well, America's fucked up.
And then we're wondering why we're taking Jackson off the bill. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, look, not a lot to be proud of. Um, so, in wrapping up, what are your kind of last thoughts about Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh, Who Framed Roger is a it was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. And if you have kids, you should have them watch it. And if you don't have kids, find some kids and make them watch it.
Okay. uh, all right. So I guess my takeaway on Who Framed Roger Rabbit is that it is a classic movie that one, it's easy to watch, it's fun to watch, it's a quick watch, it's something that you can kind of pick up and digest. But there's so much more to it than being a movie that has cartoons and human actors in it, and there's a lot to be appreciated. And it's definitely a look into the past around kind of how fucked up our sensibilities were in terms of definitely cartoon and violence and exploitation. And then it's hard not to fall in love with Roger Rabbit and really believe in laughter as a
Mm.
healing mechanism and as a community building tool and strategy. So,
Okay. Hey, Roger.
yay, Roger. So, did you start the book?
Yes, I started the book. And
I-
seems to be me in the book that they're hinting that tunes are born.
Oh, really? So there's
Yeah.
some controversy there between. So there's a huge difference between the book and the screen, and actually there were some lawsuits around royalties, where they were saying that they should have received more royalties from the book since the movie is based on the book, but I think that actually lost in
But
court or something like that.
it's because it's very loosely based on the book. It's a really only seems to me so far only based in on the book in the sense of where the names came from of the main characters. That seems to be about it. Because of course there's a Jessica Rabbit and a Roger and a Valiant and such in there. There's no Marvin Acme, to what I understand. I don't even know if R.K. Maroon is in it. I haven't come across him yet.
Well, we're going to keep reading the book. It's important to enjoy both film and literature.
Literature, literature. And
Thank
just for reference, the book is actually called Who Censored Roger Rabbit? And that has a lot to do with the fact that, unlike in the movies, tunes can't speak. They speak in thought bubbles that appear above their heads.
Oh,
So that has a lot to do with the book title. Yeah, that.
okay. Awesome. All right. Well, I think, Shana, I think we're done. We're
Yep, I
done
think
chatting
so too.
about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. We wanna thank our listeners for listening in to the Geek and the Scribe. The Geek and the Scribe is a podcast where we talk about things that we like and then tie in things that we think are important around gender, race, and a million other things. So my name is Jamara, and I am your scribe.
And I'm Shayna, and I'm your geek.
And thank you so much for listening to the Geek and the Scribe.
Toodles.
Bye bye.